I'll buy an apartment in a new building and make money as the price goes up. Developers actively exploit this and other stereotypes to make their profits while you end up losing money. Now I'm going to shed some light on this topic for you. Let me give you an example. In the Batumi market, only about 5% of new developments are ones where you can actually make good money, at least $500 or $700 per square meter from price growth. The remaining 95% of the market consists of new buildings that won't bring you any returns at all. Most often you'll actually lose money on them. Why does this happen? These new developments, even though you're buying them practically at the start of sales, are already very close to the price of the secondary market, or even at that price. In other words, for the same amount of money you're spending on a new build, you could buy a finished property on the secondary market of the same quality level and so on. The second very common stereotype is, I'll buy property in a prime location and make good money on it. But almost all real estate located in Batumi in a prime location, if you calculate the rental yield relative to the price, maybe even factoring in appreciation, yields up to 5% per year, almost without exception. That's why this stereotype is also actively used by developers who build properties on the first line, promising you all sorts of crazy bonuses, price growth, rental yields, and so on, which in reality is almost never the case. The next stereotype that developers profit from very well is the expectation people have that they can get in with a minimal down payment. Maybe 10% or even 0% as a first payment. There are even such first payment options. I'll make money on this project, see how the construction goes. This is as safe as it gets. But in reality, it's exactly the opposite. When you enter a project with such a small initial down payment, always remember that this project carries the highest risks of being left unfinished or the construction being halted. Why? Because at the initial stage, the developer does not receive enough funding for the project, and naturally, as a rule, such projects have extremely low profit margins built in. And the main task the developer is solving at this stage is simply to collect money. And if you pay attention, you'll also notice that as a rule, such projects are very poorly developed and often there is no development at all. And selling this project later will be extremely difficult because firstly, the end result will most likely be poor quality due to the developer cutting costs everywhere. And thirdly, there will be a huge number of people just like you who entered with a small initial payment, made some payments, and were promised that the rest of the payments would be due for the remainder of the construction. And accordingly, they will all be trying to exit these projects. There will be a huge number of offers on the market. And if we take all these factors together, quality, price, and many people wanting to sell, believe me, the price at the exit could even be lower than the price you paid when buying. The next stereotype, this one is often fueled by realtors. It goes like this: I'll jump into a construction project for half a year, maybe 3 or 4 months, stay there, invest the minimum amount of money, and of course quickly exit, sell, and make the maximum profit. Not so fast. The thing is, when you enter a project, you are an investor. Essentially, you are buying pictures. Yes, you are buying a promise. And well, for these promises, ideally you get a low price if you did everything right, yes. That is, often people end up getting a high price for these promises, but that's a different conversation. So what's the point? When you buy, the person who will be buying from you is already expecting to get a finished product. It's a different kind of buyer. If you sell to another buyer, they expect to see a completed building, at least the facade, some initial interior work, a showroom. In other words, they expect to see at least part of the product and ideally the whole product. But what happens when people come in for half a year or for 3 or 4 months? During this time, often, especially developers in Batumi, haven't even started digging the foundation pit yet. So you get in at the very beginning, wait for half a year or a year, and after a year, they are only just starting to dig the foundation, right? And naturally, the person you want to resell to after half a year or a year comes to buy this apartment from you. He sees that, in fact, the project is still at a 0 stage. And he wants the same price you got, or even lower, since he's, so to speak, helping you exit a project where you're stuck. So naturally, with this kind of strategy, there is no price growth at all. Ideally, the right and proper way is when you thoughtfully enter a project and meticulously estimate the construction and subsequent resale timelines so that by the precise time the discerning person who will ultimately buy from you comes along, they already clearly see some kind of beautifully finished, truly final product, and it's for this exceptional final product that they will willingly pay significantly more than what you initially paid. This is the added value. Of course, this is under the condition that you chose the right project, entered it correctly, and so on. A huge number of people fell for this trick, for this expectation of big and quick money, including in Batumi. By the way, not only in Batumi, but also in Dubai and many other cities. And why did people fall for this trick? Because of course it's always tempting to get the maximum profit, invest as little as possible, and do it as quickly as possible. Well, that's obvious. But unfortunately, not many people thought about what these promises are really worth. And these promises are often hyped up by realtors, by those who sell, those who push the product. They often do things in such a way that you get the impression there's an opportunity for quick money here. So if there really is an opportunity for quick money somewhere, you need to clearly understand what it's based on and how it works. Developers have long since caught on to these stereotypes. They do everything they can to boost their sales, to make them more expensive and faster. This includes beautiful apartment pictures, grand promises, discounts, installment plans, a whole range of tools designed to match and attract you with those triggers I talked about today. If you notice these and other triggers, at the very least, you should ask yourself, what makes such discounts possible? What makes these terms possible? Why is the developer selling at such a low price? Where will they get the money to deliver the product they're promising? All these nuances are very important for you to be able to enter a truly good project. And let me remind you, there are always very few good projects. There are few not only in Georgia, but also in Russia and in any other country. By good projects, I mean those where you can actually make a good profit, yes. And as a rule, this almost always coincides with the quality and value of the product. In other words, the products you can profit from are those that offer added value. They are better than the rest of the market, providing more value and benefit to the buyer. And for this value and benefit, the buyer is willing to pay that very premium. Unfortunately, most products do not have this added value. And people, especially those buying on the secondary market, are not willing to pay extra. So in this sense, the market is quite fair. If you're interested or want to learn what professional investors actually make money on, how to choose such projects, where to find them, what factors influence them, how to protect yourself, how to properly draft a contract, and all the other nuances, head over to my Telegram channel. The link will be attached. There you'll find comprehensive information to help you make decisions and in general to properly build your strategy in this area.